Welcome to our new podcast, Education to Action with the Institute for Common Power. We have things to share, movements to create, and a world to change. So we're going to help you historicize our modern world as we use history to inspire action. I'm your host, Dr. Terry Ann Scott, Director of the Institute for Common Power and a former professor of African American history. I am joined today by Dr. Hasan Jeffries, Professor of History at The Ohio State University, the author of the highly acclaimed Bloody Lounge, speaker, museum exhibit, curator, historian extraordinaire. Welcome, Dr. Jeffries.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you and to help launch the podcast. I'm excited about this.
Yes, you're our first guest. So I'm just going to cut to the chase on this. We actually know each other and we're friends. So we just go with Terry and Hasan. How does that sound?
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay. Nobody else, though. They owe us our respect if anyone else is talking to us. It's Dr. Scott and Dr. Jeffries.
That's what I make my brother call me Dr. Jeffries. Absolutely.
See, it's very appropriate. I like that. When I first got my PhD, my daughters started calling me. I told them I'd give them $1 if they call me Dr. Mom.
I like it. Look, we worked hard for this stuff. We worked hard for it. You better respect it.
100%. So absolutely. So I have a plain background. I'm going to work this into this. I just moved here to Arizona. So as subsequent episodes go, it'll get a little bit more kind of stuff to look like. Right now, it just looks like I'm being interrogated in a room. All right. Love your background, though. Am I right to know that, did you build your own shelf, somebody told me?
I did. This was pre-pandemic. It was the one thing I always wanted, in graduate school and the like. I would go to these professors' homes and they'd have. So I was like, I needed to, when I bought the house that we live in now, I said, I need a little office space and I'm going to build my little bookshelves and little marble. You can see over my shoulder. I don't know if you can see, you could do a lot with Home Depot. I'm just saying, in a little time.
That's a skill. Carpenter as well. It's very impressive. So what I would like to do this week and each time that we meet for our Education to Action conversation is to talk about what's happening in our modern world, historicize it. We are both historians, so we have the ability to do that, and subsequent guests will be doing that. And then at the end of that, leave everybody with an action plan and some hope and inspiration, because I don't know about you, but I suspect you are similar in that every day there is something where we're watching this toppling of democracy and it can be so daunting and overwhelming and depressing. And so what lessons do we learn from the past that we can apply to today? Every day, unfortunately, also is giving us fodder to have a conversation on a podcast. And one of the things that has happened this week is that this man in the White House has gotten involved in something that, naive me did not think that he would get involved in, despite the fact that he did it years ago, the NFL. And so this week he has threatened the Washington Commanders with not being able to play in a new stadium that is slated to be built in Washington, D.C. if they do not change their name back to their old racist name that they moved away from just a few years ago. I'm going to place this in a little historical context and then toss it to you for you to kind of further dismantle this and tell us what it means today. This is the only second time in American history that a president has threatened to not allow a team to play in a stadium that is subsidized by the federal government. The other time it happened was in 1963, when President John F. Kennedy told the same team, then named the Washington, with their racist name, we could say it, we could not say it, but I don't want to give any power to it. They threatened to not allow them to play if they did not reintegrate. They were the last team to reintegrate. Not to integrate, to reintegrate. When the NFL started in 1922, it actually had a number of black players, including Fritz Pollard, who was a black coach and quarterback, and George Preston Marshall, who ironically or not so much, was the owner of that same Washington team, orchestrated a gentleman's agreement in 1933 to remove black players from the league. They were becoming too visible. People were beginning to make money. And so the league did not reintegrate until 1946, when the then Los Angeles Rams, who had just moved to Los Angeles for the first time, was going to play in the LA Stadium. And this is coming off of World War II, when black folks had gone overseas and died for democracy and coming back to segregated spaces. The black press launched a campaign and it caught the attention of the LA Stadium, and they said to the LA Rams, you cannot play in our stadium unless you integrate. And so we had our first two black players who were teammates of Jackie Robinson, actually, at UCLA, who integrated. And then 1963, George Preston Marshall, who had orchestrated this agreement, Washington team, they had to reintegrate as well. Now that leads us up to today. So, Hasan, I'm going to give it to you.
Well, thank you for that history and that background. And I will toss in there add as well. Major League Baseball, the same thing in terms of having to reintegrate. We talk about Jackie Robinson desegregating Major League Baseball. It was the same thing, a gentleman's agreement over the decades, excluded African Americans. You had African Americans playing baseball, professional baseball, through the end of the 19th century, turn of the 20th century. And it's also interesting to note that you mentioned the black ball players that played that desegregated NFL and were teammates of Jackie Robinson. Teammates, not of the baseball player Jackie Robinson or the track athlete Jackie Robinson, but of the football player, the standout football player at UCLA, who actually had to, speaking of connections, who actually had to leave school early, not to go to the war, but to play professional football in Hawaii because he couldn't afford tuition anymore. He couldn't afford to stay at UCLA, so he actually left early to play professional football, plays professional football, then goes into the service and comes out and plays Negro League baseball. So there's a lot of the intersection of civil rights and sports and football are critically important.
Can I just say
Now,
very quickly,
yeah,
already, just in this last few minutes, we have probably dropped so much information about history and sports history and the intersection of race and sports that most people had no idea about. So
right,
keep
right.
that clear.
Which is the beauty of the podcast, right? Which is
That's
the beauty
right.
of the
That's
podcast.
right.
Now, sometimes when we think about history, and you know this well, we think about these big social forces that are impacting people's lives and the like. And, that is true. And it's important to look at those. But sometimes, history happens and is made just simply because of personal grievance, right? And if
Yeah.
you understand
Yeah.
Donald Trump, right, that so much of his sort of policy prescriptions aren't rooted in belief or ideology. It's just personal grievance. And one of the grievances that he has always had is sort of being on the outside of sort of the billionaires boys club, never being quite in the crowd. I mean, whether that's being born in Queens and trying to get into New York City, but also one of the things, and I'm a New Yorker, so we grew up with this guy. One of the things that we always knew is that he wanted an NFL franchise, always did. And the NFL was like, fool, you're not going to have a franchise, right? And so when he then helps to become a part of a sort of break off parallel challenging organization, a football league, the USFL, the United
Yes,
States
I remember them.
Football League, and he had a team, he had a franchise, the Generals, right? But this is well documented. He actually approaches the NFL and says, now, this is typical Trump. He is a franchise owner in the USFL, trying to, rah rah, boom boom, USFL. He goes to the NFL and says, listen, if you let me into the NFL, I will kill the USFL, of which he has a league, of
Right.
which he has a stake in, right? He's like, no, I'll kill it. I want to be in the NFL. And Pete Rozelle and these others were like,
So
no.
duplicit and so
Yeah,
on character.
it's classic, right? So
Yeah.
he has had, this sort of animus, this personal grievance against the NFL for decades.
Yep.
And then we saw it again, in the first campaign, right? When he goes after Colin Kaepernick. And he doesn't only go after Colin Kaepernick, he goes after him by saying that the owners are the ones who are allowing this to happen. If he was an owner, like he would knock him in. Remember all those campaign speeches, right? So again, so it's not a surprise now. And with the Colin Kaepernick stuff, it was all about race and racism and pitching to that racial grievance that we see the same thing now. Like we need to go back to the name of the Reds, to that name, as
Yeah.
well as I'm in Ohio, the Cleveland
Yes.
Guardians. He's saying, let's go back and change that. They never should have did that. That was a throw in, right? He could care less about, he played baseball, so he
And
has a
they
little.
have spoken to that. They have now said,
They
we're very
have.
comfortable with
They
our name.
have.
We're not going to
Yes.
change it.
We're not changing
By
it.
contrast, the Washington Commanders, and I'm not faulting them for this, but they have, I don't think as of today, they have publicly responded to this. But my assumption is, I mean, Magic Johnson is one of the owners. I don't
Yeah.
see them capitulating to this man, regardless of the money.
No, but here's where the Washington situation becomes unique, right? And because it's not just about, the name and sort of leverage there, it's about the stadium, right?
Yes.
And the relationship. So this gets into sort of that relation that the fact that DC does not have statehood, that DC actually is beholden to the federal government, that the mayor and the city council essentially had to come to an agreement with the federal government to get this new stadium.
Right.
So can
Which was
Donald Trump
years in the making.
sabotage? Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So can he do it? The thing that's so unique about this instance is that it actually follows a pattern. And and it's not necessarily Trump. I can't give him this much credit, but it's the people around him who have
Yeah.
identified how to use the federal dollars to
Hmm.
leverage against private as well as public institutions, public government, state government, city governments, and the like, DC, to exert their will. And
Yeah.
this is another instance, right? If you don't change your name, then I'm not going to make it possible. Right?
Right.
We're going to pull back on that on a
And
bill he
how to
agreed on.
gain public support for having the private industry bend to their will by riling up their racist base. And
Right.
so by using that, we did a TikTok the other day where I was talking about this, and some of the responses that we got were this overwhelming support that people have to change. Those are negative responses. Most of them were positive, but to change the name back, to say, oh, that's what indigenous groups want. That's what the family of the mascot wants. And so whatever he says, it becomes canon because he is then appealing to their own kind of once latent, but now very present racist ideologies.
Yeah, it's no accident, right? I mean, so
No.
there is the personal grievance, but there's also the political play. And I mean, the one thing that he understands is that racism is the most powerful mobilizing
Yeah.
ideology that America has ever created. And we see him going to it again and again and again,
We keep getting
especially when he finds himself in trouble,
Yep.
right? And of
Hmm.
course, he's throwing everything at everything and the kitchen sink at the wall as he's trying to dodge this whole Epstein thing. And
Right.
so, to understand, I think
Including
we try to
Obama that he's trying to get arrested
even
now.
Obama, right? I mean, Obama. I mean, right now, Obama's like, keep my name out your mouth. Martin Luther
Right.
King is like, keep my name out your mouth. Like, what are you
Yeah,
doing,
Bernice
bro?
King is not having it.
It's like,
She's going
I
all
know.
in.
She
Yeah.
was like, now release the Epstein files. You gotta
Right.
love that. You gotta love,
Right.
but they understand that
Hmm.
this is like it's always the balance that you have to have when dealing with this administration and with this guy is you have to deal with the nonsense as it comes out, even though you
Yeah.
know it's a distraction, because it will take on a life of its own if you're not careful. And so you have to knock it down immediately. It's important to talk about it and say, you know what? I know we're dealing with this big bad bill and Medicare and all this other stuff. And I know this is a distraction because you're worried about the Epstein stuff, but we're not going to cede ground on that. And we're going back to the big issue at hand.
Right. And you're right. We do have to address it because if we don't address it, then again, it takes on a life of its own and people begin to use these kinds of concepts. It erodes the progress that we've made in helping people to
Yeah.
become more enlightened and helping to create a more just and inclusive democracy. So if we just ignore it and say nothing, there are too many people who take it and say, well, why can't we do that? What's wrong with that? So we have to address it no matter what it is. And you're right. He continues to just throw things against the wall to distract us, but we can't just let them fall because there are too many stupid people who will take it up and say that is exactly right. So we have to combat that. And others who just are low information individuals, right? So we have to provide them with the information, education, and then we got to go to action. Absolutely.
One of the things that I think is becoming very clear, if it wasn't already, is that like with this, it was like I thought we fought this battle already and won, right? I thought we litigated this already and won, right? And this wasn't just
We
the
did.
changing of the names wasn't something that just happened overnight. I mean, this is generations, right, of
It
people saying
just,
like, no, you got to do this,
yeah,
right?
I mean, it just happened for both
And
of them.
and we finally got it, right? So, and it finally happens. And but this is I think one of the lessons to come out of this when we look back, with the advantage of time and of the passage of time, is that things that we thought were, that we thought we had gained and were stable,
Yeah.
we had achieved and we were holding on to, we didn't have to fight that battle anymore. It's like, no, you have to fight for every gain and you
That's
have to
right.
be prepared to continue to fight for it at all times.
Right. We can't just sit back and say we've accomplished that. I mean, it's like voting. Now I read an article that they're trying to remove hundreds of thousands of people from the voter rolls in Georgia once again. These are history is a series of progress and backlash,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to progress that is being made by marginalized groups and mostly by Black folks.
Yeah.
And then there is a backlash to that. And so we see that again with Georgia. Georgia goes blue in 2020, and now all of these voter oppression laws that appear to be okay in the language, but in their application are very discriminatory. Now those are at the forefront. So to your point, no, we can never rest. And that's one of the things that we do at the Institute and that you do. I think we have very similar ideologies when it comes to our work as historians. It is not just for the sake of doing the history, but it is for the sake to encourage people to learn from the past and create change today. Period. We have no other option. So as we kind of come to the close with episode 1, and thank you for joining us, I want people to then have a sense of like, now what? So what are a couple of action items that you can suggest, either related to that or just related to making it through what we are facing today? What can we do?
I think there's so much, right? And there's so many areas we can focus on. But just sticking with the topic at hand, this idea of changing names back.
Yeah.
I think now is critically important, and this is something everybody can do. Reach out to the owners. Send, now is the time to email these franchises and say, do not yield. Do not, right? And they'll get the message because dollars speak with them. So, and this doesn't just have to be sort of fans of the Washington Commanders or the
Right.
Cleveland Guardians, right? This is just fans of the NFL. Send that
Or
email
even
to
if
the
you hate the
commissioner.
NFL, if you just are a person who believes in
Exactly.
justice.
Totally.
Fair.
Like
Yeah.
this is something. It's 2 minutes. Send the email. I've heard it. Do not change the name. It's what. That's it. Let them hear from us. We can all. You can do that on your phone on the way to. If you're on a bus on the way to work. That is. I think that's something that we can do, and that's something that we need to get in the habit of doing now.
Yeah.
Because the pressure is being brought to bear on these institutions, on these organizations, private companies, whether corporations or universities. We need to get in the habit of making our voice heard because when those inboxes start getting inundated with people saying don't do it, don't do it,
That
then
makes
they'll
it
begin to pay attention to us.
100%. I've worked a lot with school districts. I know you have too. And one of the things that they always say is the parents who may be in the minority in their thinking, but they're very vocal when they're saying, I don't want you to teach that critical race theory. I don't want you to talk about diversity X, Y, Z. So what they ask then is for those parents who support those measures to be just as vocal. We need to quell the voices of the Moms for Liberties and others. So to your point, if we don't support this, we need to be loud about that then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely,
brilliant.
absolutely. We have to be the voice of diversity and the voice of democracy and the voice of justice. Let them hear from us.
100%. Fantastic. Hasan, thank you. Dr. Jeffries, thank you so much for joining me. And we're out. See you on the next episode. All right.
We
Thanks.
good?